What happens when one of the most recognizable women on the planet sits down for what should have been an easy, friendly, late-night interview, and within minutes the entire atmosphere flips? It took exactly 37 seconds from the moment one question left the host's mouth. 37 seconds for the smile to tighten, for the energy in the room to shift, and for every person watching to realize they were witnessing an interview that would not follow the usual script. This was the moment nobody anticipated, the moment that froze the audience in stunned silence, and the moment that ultimately ended with security stepping onto the stage. Let's walk through it, moment by moment. The lights were bright and warm, the kind that give every surface a glossy shine. The band had just wrapped their musical cue when Jimmy Kimmel stepped out with his trademark easy confidence. He waved cheerfully at the cheering audience, clearly in high spirits. His show had been doing well, and tonight's guest was guaranteed to draw attention. Backstage, Meghan Markle was preparing to step out, poised, polished, ready to promote her newest project. Everything had been reviewed with producers, everything felt routine. Jimmy settled into his seat, leaned toward the camera, and flashed his familiar grin. All right, folks, you know our next guest. Actress, advocate, former member of the royal family, please welcome Meghan Markle. The applause thundered across the studio. Audience members rose from their seats. The band played her in. Meghan walked out looking effortlessly composed in an elegant cream outfit, smiling broadly as she waved. She and Jimmy exchanged a quick professional hug before she took her seat on the couch. The crowd quieted as the interview began. "It is so great to have you here," Jimmy said warmly. "I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me," Meghan replied, her voice smooth and practiced. She mentioned how good it felt to be back in Los Angeles, and Jimmy joked that the city loved her just as much. Then he shifted into promotion mode. "Now, you've got this new venture everyone's talking about. Tell us about it." Meghan's face brightened. "Yes, I've been working on an incredible project focused on empowering women, giving them space to share their stories. So many women are silenced, and I want to create a platform where that doesn't happen." The audience applauded politely. Everything was flowing naturally. Jimmy asked follow-up questions. Meghan offered polished, familiar answers. It was exactly the kind of wholesome, positive segment late-night shows thrive on. Then, Jimmy asked a different type of question. Not rude, not attacking, simply one any interviewer might ask. "So I'm curious," he began. "You talk a lot about wanting privacy, which makes total sense, but you also do a lot of public projects. Interviews, your podcast, the Netflix deal. How do you balance wanting privacy with being so public? That seems like a tricky line to walk." Most people didn't notice Meghan's initial reaction, but anyone watching closely would have seen it. The smallest shift, a flicker in her expression. Her smile stayed, but its softness evaporated. "Well," she said, her tone noticeably firmer, "there's a difference between choosing to share your story on your own terms and having it told for you by people who don't know you." Jimmy nodded, still casual. She continued explaining that the Netflix series was about reclaiming her narrative, about telling her truth rather than letting tabloids or anonymous palace sources shape it. Jimmy smiled politely. "Right, that makes sense. I guess I'm just curious how you personally decide what to share and what to keep private." And that was the moment, the 37-second mark that changed everything. Meghan straightened sharply, almost defensively. "I'm not sure I understand what you're asking me, Jimmy." Her tone had shifted completely. The warmth vanished, the media-trained polish melted away, replaced by something sharper, more guarded. Jimmy remained calm. He'd dealt with tense guests before. He said, "I'm just asking you how you make those decisions." And from that point onward, nothing about the interview would go as planned. Jimmy tried to clarify his question, keeping his tone light. "I just meant, how do you decide what stays private and what becomes part of the public conversation? It's an interesting thing to think about." Meghan's eyes narrowed just slightly. "Are you suggesting that I'm being hypocritical?" The audience went instantly silent. The shift in energy was unmistakable. People glanced at one another, unsure whether they were supposed to laugh. Was this a joke? A rehearsed bit? It wasn't. No, not at all," Jimmy said quickly, raising his hands in a calm, almost apologetic gesture. "I'm genuinely curious. It wasn't a gotcha question, I promise." It sounded like a gotcha question, Meghan replied. Her voice was rising, gaining a sharp edge. It sounded like you're trying to paint me as some kind of hypocrite who demands privacy while also choosing to be in the public eye. And I have to tell you, I'm really disappointed you'd go there. A flicker of shock crossed Jimmy's face. This was not the direction he had expected the interview to take. Meghan, that truly wasn't my intention. I'm sorry if it came across that way. Well, it did come across that way, she answered, her frustration growing. And I'm tired of it. Tired of people questioning my motives. Tired of people insisting I don't have the right to protect parts of my life while also speaking about the things that matter to me. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. The audience sat frozen. No laughs, no murmurs, just quiet, stunned attention as the interview unraveled in real time. Jimmy inhaled slowly, trying to regain control. You're absolutely right, he said gently. They're not mutually exclusive. I apologize if my question was clumsy. Why don't we move on to something? No, I think we need to address this, because this is exactly what I'm talking about. This kind of treatment, this relentless scrutiny, this constant questioning of everything I do, it's exhausting. I understand, Jimmy began, still calm. And I really am sorry. Do you, though? Do you understand what it's like to have every single thing you do picked apart? To have an entire institution working against you? To feel like an outsider in your own family? Do you understand what that feels like? Jimmy paused, choosing his words. I can't say I understand all of that, he admitted softly, but I do know you've been through a lot, and I respect how you've handled it. Then why ask me questions that feed the same narrative that tabloids push? Why give them ammunition? That wasn't my intention, Jimmy repeated. It was just a question about how public figures manage their personal boundaries. I ask everyone a version of that. I asked George Clooney the same thing last month. I'm not George Clooney. I know you're not. I just meant it's a standard. Well, maybe it shouldn't be, she shocked back. Maybe interviewers should think more about the consequences of their questions. Because words matter, Jimmy. The way you frame something matters. The tension in the room was now unbearable. People shifted in their seats. No one dared cough or whisper. Jimmy attempted one more olive branch. Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot. That's on me. Can we start over? I really do want to talk about your project and the great work you're doing. For a moment, it looked like Meghan might accept the reset. Her shoulders eased. She took a breath. Then Jimmy made a mistake. He glanced off stage at his producer, just for a second, just to check the timing. But the look could be interpreted differently. Meghan saw it. Did you just roll your eyes at me? She asked, her voice icy. What? No, you were just what? Looking to your producer for instructions on how to handle the difficult guest? Making sure you're getting good footage of me having a breakdown? Meghan, I promise I didn't roll my eyes. I saw it. Don't gaslight me. I've had enough gaslighting to last a lifetime. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Gaslight. Heavy. Accusatory. Jimmy's expression shifted. For the first time, he looked genuinely hurt. That's not fair, he said quietly. I've never gaslit anyone, and I would never do that to you. Then what was that look? I was checking the time left in the segment. I do it every interview. It's procedure. It wasn't about you. Everything is about me when I'm in this chair, when I'm the one being judged. A long, suffocating silence followed. Finally, Jimmy straightened, his voice steady, composed, unmistakably professional. He had clearly decided on the high road, even if the interview had already gone off the cliff.
Meghan, I am genuinely sorry that you feel attacked, Jimmy said softly. That was never my intention. I've always respected you. All I wanted tonight was to have a good conversation and give you space to talk about your new project. That's all. For a brief moment, the air seemed to steady. His apology was calm, sincere, an open door for things to settle. He was giving her every opportunity to de-escalate. But instead of stepping through that door, Meghan took the exchange somewhere entirely different. "You know what your problem is, Jimmy?" He raised his eyebrows slightly, but didn't interrupt. "Your problem," she continued, "is that you're part of the machine, part of the system that chews people up and spits them out. You sit here in your nice suit, behind your nice desk, asking your nice questions, and you think you're one of the good guys, but you're not. You're just another cog in the wheel that destroys people." A collective gasp burst from the audience. No one had expected that. Jimmy's jaw tightened for the first time, the words hitting harder than he wanted to show, though he kept his professional composure. "I'm sorry you see it that way," he said evenly. "I don't agree with your characterization, but I understand that you're upset." "Of course you don't agree," Meghan snapped. "People like you never do. You never see the harm you cause because you're too busy congratulating yourselves on being progressive and enlightened." "The rest of us, who?" Jimmy asked quietly. "The press, the media, everyone who's made my life a living nightmare these past years. You're all the same." Jimmy shook his head gently. "Meghan, I have spent my entire career trying to be fair, trying to be kind, trying to give people a platform to share their stories. I'm not perfect, but I try. And I don't think it's fair to lump me in with tabloid journalists and paparazzi." "Fair," Meghan let out a laugh, sharp, bitter. "You want to talk about fair. Nothing about my life has been fair since the day I met Harry." "I believe you, and I truly am sorry for that." "Stop saying you're sorry," she said sharply. "Your apologies mean nothing if you don't change your behavior." "What behavior?" "I asked one question. One. It wasn't hostile or unreasonable. It's the kind of question any public figure might get." "But I'm not just any public figure. I'm me. I come with history, with trauma, with years of being mistreated by people who were supposed to protect me. So when you ask me a question like that, you're not just asking a question, you're triggering years of pain." Jimmy fell silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and compassionate. "I hear you, and I'm sorry my question brought up those feelings. But I can't be responsible for everything that has happened to you. I can only be responsible for my own actions and intentions, and my intentions were good." "The road to hell is paved with good intentions," she fired back. "Maybe it is, but it's also paved with assuming the worst of people, and right now you're assuming the worst about me, even though I've been nothing but respectful." This seemed to throw her. She had expected him to keep apologizing, not stand his ground. "Are you saying I'm the problem?" she demanded. "I'm saying we both contributed to this moment. I asked a question that upset you, but you've spent the last 10 minutes attacking my character and calling me part of an evil machine, and that's not fair either." Meghan's eyes narrowed. "So now you're the victim." "I'm not claiming to be a victim," he said firmly. "I'm pointing out that this has become a two-way street." "Unbelievable," she muttered, turning to the audience. "Do you see this? This is exactly what I've dealt with for years. They provoke you, and when you react, suddenly you're the villain." The audience remained still, trapped in the crossfire. Jimmy leaned forward. "Meghan, I did not provoke you. I asked a straightforward question. I apologized. I offered to move on. You chose to escalate, and now you're trying to turn the audience against me. I can't let that happen." "Oh, now you fight back," she said coldly. "Now you show your true colors." "My true colors," Jimmy said evenly, "are exactly what you've seen for 20 years. I like to laugh, talk to interesting people, and have fun. That's it. I'm not out to get you." Suddenly, Meghan stood. The movement was abrupt, jarring. The entire studio tensed. "You know what? I don't have to sit here and take this." "Meghan, please," Jimmy began. "Let's just—" "No, I'm done. I'm done being questioned. I'm done being disrespected." She stood in front of the couch, hands on her hips, eyes blazing, every person in the room holding their breath.
Jimmy rose from his chair as well, though far more slowly, both hands lifted in a soft, pacifying gesture. His voice was calm, almost pleading. "No one is disrespecting you. Let's just sit back down and finish this interview. We can talk about anything you want." I don't want to talk about anything anymore, Meghan snapped. Not with you. Jimmy exhaled, a tight, controlled breath. All right, that's your choice. But can we at least end this civilly? For the audience's sake? They're here too. Meghan swept her gaze across the room. The crowd, caught between fascination and discomfort, stared back at her with wide eyes. Her expression hardened into something close to contempt. You think I care about the audience right now? You think I care about anything except getting out of this studio and away from you? A ripple of hurt moved across the faces of the spectators. They had expected laughter, lightness, a fun night out. Instead, they were being told they didn't matter. Jimmy stepped out from behind his desk, an unusual move, one that shifted the energy instantly. Meghan, he said gently, I understand you're upset, but these people aren't your enemies. They came because they wanted to see you. They don't deserve to be dismissed. She turned toward him, closing the space between them until only a few feet remained. Her voice was sharp, almost shaking with rage. Don't you dare lecture me about how to treat people. You have no idea what I've been through. You have no idea what it's like to be in my position. You're right, I don't. But I do know what it means to treat people decently. And right now, you're not doing that. His words hit the room like a sudden thunderclap. The audience gasped, a collective shocked inhale. Jimmy Kimmel had never spoken to a guest like that before, and the tension that had been simmering all night finally boiled over. Her face flushed. How dare you speak to me like that? I dare because someone needs to. You've spent this entire interview attacking me, my crew, my audience, for what? Because I asked a question you didn't like? Because you chose to take offense when none was intended? You don't get to decide what's offensive to me. No, I don't. But I do get to decide how I respond when someone is being unreasonable, and you're being unreasonable. I am standing up for myself, she shot back, something I should have done a long time ago. There's a difference between standing up for yourself and coming in here spoiling for a fight. You walked onto this stage ready to be offended, like you were waiting for someone to give you an excuse to play the victim. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Take that back. I can't, because it's true. And deep down, you know it. For a long, breathless moment, they simply stared at each other. The silence was so thick the audience barely dared to move. Then Meghan's voice, trembling with fury, broke the stillness. You're going to regret this, Jimmy. Every word. I don't think I will, because everything I've said is the truth, and sometimes the truth hurts. She laughed then, a cold, hollow laugh. You want truth. The truth is you're a bully. You've humiliated me on national television. Jimmy shook his head. No, you expected to be treated like royalty, and when you weren't, you couldn't handle it. You've spent so long surrounded by people who only agree with you that you've forgotten how to have a real conversation. I see enemies because they're everywhere, she spat. And I just proved I'm not one, but I'm also not your punching bag. Off to the side, security began to gather quietly. The entire room sensed the escalation reaching its peak. Meghan noticed and scoffed. Perfect. Are you going to have me dragged out? No one's dragging you anywhere, but ending this interview is best for everyone. Fine. I was leaving anyway. She grabbed her purse, marched toward the exit, then spun back. What you did tonight will follow you. People will finally see who you really are. Jimmy didn't flinch. If they do, I'm comfortable with it, because who I am is someone who tried again and again to be fair, and finally had to draw a line when that kindness was thrown back in his face. Unbelievable, she muttered, heels cracking sharply against the floor as she stormed away.
The audience watched in total silence as Meghan made her way toward the exit. Her heels clicked sharply across the stage, each step echoing through the tension-filled studio. She was only a few feet from the door when Jimmy called out, his voice steady but heavy with sincerity. "Meghan." She stopped. She didn't turn around, didn't speak, didn't breathe in a way anyone could hear. Jimmy swallowed hard, then said softly, "For what it's worth, I really am sorry it went this way. I didn't want any of this." For a long moment, she remained frozen, her back to him. Then, without lifting her head, she replied quietly, "It doesn't matter what you wanted. It only matters what happened." And with that, she pushed through the exit and disappeared. The studio fell into a silence so complete it was almost physical. Jimmy remained standing at the center of the stage, staring at the door that had just shut behind her. The audience didn't move. They didn't clap. They didn't boo. They sat unsure whether the moment called for sympathy, judgment, or simply stunned disbelief. Finally, after what felt like minutes, Jimmy turned toward his desk. He walked slowly, like someone carrying a weight that wasn't just emotional, but bodily. When he reached his chair, he lowered himself into it with a tired exhale and faced the camera. "Well, folks, that was something." A few nervous laughs trickled through the audience, thin and uncertain. Jimmy took another breath. "I want to apologize to all of you for what you just witnessed. That is not the show we wanted to do tonight. That's not the interview we planned. I've been doing this for a long time, and I don't think I've ever experienced anything quite like that." I looked out at the audience again, and something softened in his expression. "I also want to say, because I think it's important, that I meant what I said. I tried to be fair. I tried to be kind. I tried multiple times to de-escalate things. But there comes a point where you have to stand up for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable." The audience began to clap, hesitant at first, then stronger, rising into a supportive applause. Some stood, others nodded. It wasn't cheering, it was understanding. Jimmy lifted his hand. "I'm not looking for validation. I don't know if I handled everything perfectly, but my intentions were good from start to finish, and I hope that counts for something." He turned toward his band leader. "Cleo, can you play us something happy? I think we all need it." The band launched into a bright, upbeat tune, and slowly the tension in the room began to melt away. People were smiling again, whispering to one another, trying to process the emotional storm they had just witnessed. Jimmy leaned back in his chair, letting the music roll over him. He looked tired, deeply tired, but also like a man who had stayed true to himself, even when it cost him. The interview was done. The guest was gone. But the memory of what had happened on that stage would linger far beyond this night. In the control room, producers were already reviewing the footage, exchanging glances. They knew they had captured something extraordinary. Outside in the parking lot, a black SUV pulled away from the studio. In the back seat, Meghan Markle sat alone, staring out at the Los Angeles night. No one could know what she was thinking, whether she felt justified, wounded, victorious, or regretful. But one thing was clear. A simple promotional interview had become something far larger. Back on stage, Jimmy finished the show. He told jokes, introduced the next guest, did what professionals do. He kept going. But when the camera switched off and the audience filed out, Jimmy stayed seated at his desk, alone with his thoughts. He replayed the conversation, the tipping points, the words spoken and unspoken. He reflected on how quickly an ordinary exchange could explode. Yet he also knew he would return tomorrow. This was his job, his passion. He believed in conversation, in connection, even in conflict when it came from an honest place. The studio was dark now, empty chairs, silent cameras, cooling lights. But the echoes of what had happened on that stage would linger far beyond this night. This was the night that changed everything, the night no one would forget. And through it all, one man had stood his ground, not cruelly, not vindictively, but with quiet dignity. That man was Jimmy Kimmel. The interview was over, but the story was only beginning.